Bible Worm, reading the Bible with Bible Worm.
Welcome to Bible Worm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, Professor of Religious Studies at Hendrix College and Theologian in Residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas.
And I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning and Music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish and one Christian.
This week, we're reading John's version of the Call of the Disciples as told in John 1, 35-51. Unlike the Synoptic story of Jesus beckoning Peter, James, and John from their fishing boats, this version of the Call of the Disciples is more subtle and variable. Two disciples follow Jesus because they're curious, one because his brother invites him. One gets a direct call from Jesus, and another is skeptical but goes along anyway. It doesn't matter how you receive the call of Jesus, we think, but just that you take the next step, however big or however small. Come and see becomes a refrain in this text. But what do these new disciples see? They see Jesus, the kingdom of heaven come to earth, walking around and being human, not just teaching them, but also showing them how to live a life, how to be human with deep authenticity that invites further relationship. How can we too embody that kind of life? Come and see, Jesus says. Come and see. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Amy, it's Bible Worm time.
Hey, Bobby, how are you?
I am doing okay. It has been a little bit of a time home with family.
A little bit of a time home with family, yeah.
I'm both like glad to be out of my house and also a little sad that I'm kind of back at doing my regular stuff. Although being with you is delightful.
Oh,
but the rest of my stuff,
it's just the rest of the stuff.
The rest of everything that I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah. So it's a mix of emotions for me today.
It's so interesting to sort of step out of the daily rhythms of things during breaks. I came to an important realization about what I should do with the next chapter in my life during my time away.
That sounds big. What are you going to do?
I am going to make half sour pickles.
That sounds about right.
I don't think it's going to be like a career. I think it's just going to be like, yeah, that's the pickler lady, like she pickles things.
The pickle lady. I like it.
There is no reason these pickles should be available in New York and not Atlanta. There's just no reason, and I'm going to change that.
Well, I will confess to you, I guess maybe this is because I'm a Southerner, not a New Yorker. I don't even know what a half sour pickle is.
It's going to change
your
life. I know what a
sour pickle is. I know what a sweet pickle is. No idea what a half sour pickle is. Yeah. What's the other half?
Yeah.
Is it like you just hold one half of the pickle down in the stuff and then the other half's just like a cucumber?
No, but it's like, but it's like still, it's like fresh and crispy. Like it still has its like essential cucumber essence about it. But also it has this like it's going to change your life, Bobby.
Yeah.
And mine. That's the next chapter.
Is this the story that you were telling me a minute ago about you drove an extra 3 hours? Not to have a pickle in Manhattan?
Yeah. Yes. We have to, in order to drive home to see my family lives on Long Island, and we have to drive through the city. And my husband wanted to stop for lunch. And I was like, no, that's stupid. Like we're not doing that. It's going to be so much trouble. It's going to be whatever, too much trouble. And he was like, no, I want pizza. And I was like, I'm not stopping for pizza. And then I was like, oh, wait.
But I would stop for pickles.
Yeah. Well, first I was like, I would stop for a deli, like a real good, real deli, the way that we don't have it in Atlanta. But I forgot that I don't eat meat anymore. And really the appeal of a deli is mostly
the meats.
The meat.
Yes.
So, I mean, I got soup. It was fine. But you get this like free little tray of pickles and coleslaw.
Nice.
You get a garlic pickle. Everyone gets a garlic pickle and a half sour pickle and coleslaw. And it's how the world should be.
Yeah. I will have to try that the next time I am in Manhattan, which The last time I was in Manhattan was like, I can't even remember it. So,
But that's why I have to bring it. That's why I have to bring it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The
then we
pickle lady.
hit some very serious traffic. So to get the like 30 miles to my house from there took about 3 hours.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it was totally worth
We
it.
paid the price. It was
Totally
worth
worth it. Yeah. Okay, Amy. Well, today we are picking back up in the Gospel of John. We're reading the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verses 35 to 51. Last week, we read all the way up to verse 34. So we are exactly right where we need to be.
it. Yeah.
Is there anything we need to remind ourselves or pay attention to, or just to get ourselves back in the zone of reading the Gospel of John, or are we ready to jump on in?
I mean, I think we're pretty much ready to jump on in. Mostly we've been in this scene with John the Baptist, and we have encountered Jesus, but not so much has happened yet.
Yeah, John just said, "Hey, there's Jesus," and called him the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. But there was no interaction with Jesus. He just it seems like he just walked by, and John's like, "That's him over there."
Yeah, right. Pointed him out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this story that we are reading here, as we'll see in verse 35, takes place the next day. So we're one day after that, "Hey, there's Jesus over there," which was also one day after the initial conversation Jesus had with the Pharisees. So John is keeping track of time for us. And so we're on day 3 of the narrative section of the Gospel of John. And I'm picking up in verse 35 and reading in the Common English Bible. The next day, John was standing again with 2 of his disciples. When he saw Jesus walking along, he said, "Look, the Lamb of God." The 2 disciples heard what he said, and they followed Jesus. When Jesus turned and saw them following, he said, "What are you looking for?" They said, "Rabbi," which is translated teacher, "where are you staying?" He replied, "Come and see." So they went and saw where he was staying, and they remained with him that day. It was about 4:00 in the afternoon.
I love that timestamp.
Tell me more. Tell me why you love that timestamp.
I just 4:00 has a very particular feeling for me. The work of the day is largely done, but it's not dinner time yet, but I feel like the day is starting to slow a little bit.
Yeah.
Oprah used to go on at 4:00. That's really what I remember. They probably weren't watching Oprah, but it's the Oprah time, eternally Oprah time.
I was trying to make some kind of joke about you get a disciple and you get a disciple and you get a disciple, but I couldn't quite make it land. But I just said it anyway, so there it is.
Yeah, there it is. It landed. It did.
All right, so we get John the Baptist with 2 of his disciples. We do not yet know who these disciples are, although we're going to find out here in just a minute. And we get a sort of a reprise of what happened the day before.
Yeah.
The day before, John had said, "Look, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world." And now he repeats, "the Lamb of God." This time, the disciples just start following Jesus.
Yeah.
How do you make sense of that? The disciples go this time, but they didn't go last time.
I mean, I think that's just sometimes how it is for me. I need that day to sort of reflect on, their teacher is John. They are disciples of John the Baptist, right?
Yes.
So, their teacher said the day before, that's the guy.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Instead of just to hop up and leave your teacher as soon as they say it the first time, but then they have another opportunity the next day and they're ready to explore who this person is.
I like that a lot, Amy, because it's not like these are 2 guys who don't already have a teacher. That's really important. This is the call story in the Gospel of John, but it is really different than the call stories in the other Gospels, in which the disciples in those Gospels are out fishing and Jesus comes by and says, "Follow me." So it's like they're giving up one kind of way of life and taking on a teacher that now they're going to follow. But here you're exactly right. They've already got a teacher. That teacher is John. They are his disciples. And it would be a little weird, I guess, actually, if they were just like, oh, okay. Like the first time they hear there's another teacher, they're just like off to him. But it's a having to transition yourself from following like, this is my person, to, okay, no, but that's my person.
Right. My person has redirected me to this other person.
Yeah.
And so it's time for me to shift. But that's a big deal. You know, this whole reading today, not to get ahead of myself too much, but I'll just say from the outset, had me thinking a lot about the relationships between teachers and students and what we know or imagine that was like in the ancient world, or what that's like in different communities today. That's not like, you know, your teacher for one class that you go to an hour 3 times a week. Like, it's your teacher. Like you follow them all the time. You learn just by seeing the way that they exist in their body in the world, by things that come up randomly. Like, you will get some lessons or whatever, but there's a real closeness.
Yes.
That, it's a big deal.
It feels almost like an apprentice relationship or something like that we would think about today. Yeah.
Like an apprentice in like how to be a human.
Yes. Yeah. It is interesting that John does not say to them, you should go follow that guy. The first time, he just said, there he is. The second time, he just says, there he is. And so he's pointing the way, but he's not, it's not aggressive.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's not like, get out of here.
Why doesn't John follow him?
Well, that is a good question. I guess the way that I would think about that is John's role in this gospel is to be one who testifies to Jesus, which I guess could also mean that you are a follower of Jesus. But here it seems to be that John has his own kind of integrity.
Yeah.
But that integrity consists in pointing even his own disciples toward a different teacher. So there is a departing that has to take place. One of the things that I think is so interesting in this call story is, well, first of all, here, nobody calls. So there is no like, follow me, and there's no follow him. It's just, look, there he is. And then it's not entirely clear here why the disciples follow Jesus. John says, look, the Lamb of God, and the disciples start following him. And so it's not obvious to me that they wanted a new teacher or that they were leaving John to go attach themselves to Jesus. Do you have any read of their motivations when they first follow? Like, what are they up to?
That's a great question. I mean, and Jesus essentially asks them
why are you
that
following
question
me?
in the next verse. Like, I really picture like Jesus turning around and being like, hello? Like, like what?
Yeah.
And they sort of don't answer him either.
Yeah.
They just say, where are you staying? So it seems like, I don't know. I guess my feeling is that they don't quite know, other than if their teacher says, this is the Lamb of God, like, you should naturally be curious and sort of drawn to want to be in his presence, even if it's not that you have like a question or it's thing you're asking for or whatever. It just seems like, I don't know. It seems to me they're not totally clear what their like goal is.
I agree with that reading. And I think it's just so interesting that like, this is like, it's not a dramatic call and follow story. It's it's a vague curiosity story about like, there's that guy again. Every time he shows up, our teacher says the Lamb of God. Like, let's just go and follow him around a little while. And I love your reading there of like the question of like, what is Jesus's tone of voice when he says, what are you looking for? And you're reading it as a little bit like, whoa, like, hello, like, well, what are you looking for? You can read it as like very profound, like, what are you looking for? You know, like deep in your soul, like, what is it that you seek?
I mean, I think, I wonder if it can be read both ways, or if
Yeah.
it should be read both ways as this sort of very practical, like, yes, can I help you?
Yeah.
And also that deeper question. It actually, thinking about it as pointing in both of those directions at the same time, for some reason had me thinking back to that story of Elijah in the cave in
Oh, yeah.
1 Kings 19, was it?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Where God says, what are you
here?
doing here?
Yeah.
And Elijah says his
Oh, that's a
thing, and
good
then there's this
connection.
whole experience. And then God says again, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Like, hear the question again.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing, and the text doesn't have the question in here twice. I'm just hearing it twice because I'm so aware that it can
Yeah.
point in both directions.
I like that a lot. And I like that the question back is, however you read it, it's an introspection question, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you need to look inside yourself and just see, like, what are you really doing?
Yeah.
And that can cut in all kinds of different directions. I think it's funny. You were noticing their response. Like, they don't actually answer the question. They say, where are you staying? Which to me, I just read that as like, do you ever do this? Like, you're with a friend or whatever, and you see somebody that's kind of interesting, like they're wearing something or they're doing something, and you're kind of talking about them, and then they notice, and you're like, and you're like, you hit some question like, do you have the time? Like, what? Like, we were just wondering, like, where did you get that bag or whatever? Like, you just have to come up with a question real quick to make it less
then their
awkward.
question sounds like a creepy stalker question. Where are you staying?
Yeah,
That's a weird question.
That is a weird question.
I mean,
That is true.
Jesus doesn't seem distressed by it, but I read in their question that I don't know. Maybe it is just more curiosity. Like, we want to know more about you.
Jesus' response then is, come and see.
Yeah.
We're going to see that a couple of times. Come and see. So, like, I'm just, like, what do you think about that as an invitation?
It feels very sort of like open and invitational, and sort of, as you were saying, like inviting them to discover whatever it is they need to discover. Like, if Jesus just said, I'm staying in this one room in this old lady's house and whatever, then he would be choosing the details of the situation to tell them. And this is just an invitation for them, first of all, to be with him and to follow him, because it's not, for me, it was not clear. It was not to be assumed that it's fine for them to just follow him and decide that he's their new teacher. Like, what if he doesn't want any students? But really to invite them into the sort of like intimacy of where he's staying, and then they can draw their own conclusions from it. I don't know. It feels very willing, I guess, willing to let them into whatever it is they want to see about him. Like, there's nothing to hide.
I like that way of thinking about it, a willingness, and there's an openness to let their experience be their experience.
Yeah.
Like, it is never Jesus impinging on them, but it is always this kind of invitation to the next thing. And there's a little, I feel like with Jesus here, there's a little bit of kind of a confidence, or like, once you see, like, I cannot explain to you, but once you see what's going on, then that's going to draw us into even deeper relationship. Maybe that's not quite here yet, but it's like, that's kind of the way the story plays out.
Yeah.
They call him Rabbi, which John then tells us is translated teacher. Mm-hmm. And so he goes from the Hebrew transliteration to the Greek term. Mm-hmm. And so does that reference to him as rabbi, when they call him that, does that signify anything in particular to you?
I think the way that at least the way it's hitting me today, is not in the sense of like the professional clergy category of rabbi that we have in the modern era. I don't think that's what it meant there. It didn't mean that like you have a congregation and you, you perform funerals and like whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing it more in light of, what I was saying before about the theme of teacher in this whole reading, that they declare him to be their teacher and want to follow him and just sort of spend as much time in close proximity to him as they can at this moment. Like they're not making a full commitment, but they want to be around him. I guess that's what I see. We want to learn from you, whatever that looks like. What are you thinking?
No, I think that's exactly right. I agree with everything you just said. And the only other thing I was thinking about is the sort of John here is translating things. He's saying them in Hebrew and then translating them into Greek. So I don't know what that says exactly about the audience that John is speaking to. I mean, it says that they're Greek speakers.
Yes.
And that they might not know Hebrew terms. But we'll see here and elsewhere that he also doesn't really explain the things that he's just translating them. He's not like, and let me tell you what a rabbi is.
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe what we have is a Greek-speaking Jewish audience, or maybe what we have is a Gentile audience that is familiar. So just the cross-cultural dynamics in this text, I just think are interesting, but I don't entirely know what to do with them.
That's such a good point. And as I'm sure you noticed, that'll come up a few more times in our reading too. So I'm glad you drew it out here.
Hi, y'all. It's Amy, one of your friendly co-hosts, and I want to tell you why Bible Worm is important to me. There's a Jewish tradition that Torah study is best done with a partner, a Hevruta, we call it, someone who pushes you beyond where you would have gone on your own. Bobby was essentially my Hevruta for 10 years of grad school, and I've never found a thought partner quite like him. So when he asked if I wanted to read text together, there was no real thought process before I said yes. The decision to record this podcast the way we do was risky. We don't have a script. We don't pre-talk things. We are thinking together live. And it is my hope that precisely because of that, you feel invited to think along with us. Because everyone needs a Hevruta. And if you don't have one, I hope you will let us be yours. If this way of being in relationship to biblical text speaks to you the way it speaks to me, I hope you'll help sustain us through Patreon at whatever level makes sense for you. There are some nice perks if you need them. Liturgies, videos, monthly discussion groups. This year I've added some recordings of the chanting of these texts that you might hear in a synagogue. Or you can just support us to show your appreciation and help us know that this work matters. Thanks for listening and for supporting us however you can.
Okay, so I'll pick up then in verse 40. One of the two disciples who heard what John said and followed Jesus was Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah," which is translated Christ. He led him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas," which is translated Peter. The next day Jesus wanted to go into Galilee, and he found Philip. Jesus said to him, "Follow me." Philip was from Bethsaida, the hometown of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law and the prophets, Jesus, Joseph's son, from Nazareth." Nathanael responded, "Can anything from Nazareth be good?" Philip said, "Come and see." So we are expanding from the first two disciples, who we learn are Andrew and somebody else, to the sort of first little grouping of disciples. And it's just so interesting to me that the way that each of these people gets engaged with Jesus in a somewhat different way. There's not like a standard way that it's happening.
That's right.
The first is that Andrew goes and finds his brother, Peter, or I guess his name was really Simon, but, well, you know, my name is Simon, and the things I draw come true.
He goes by many names.
Yeah. Anyway, and what he says to him is, "We have found the Messiah." So we have made a little bit of a move.
Sup, brother? We have found the Messiah.
So Jesus had just said, come and see. And then they spend a little time with him. And now they're going and finding their brother and saying, this is the Messiah.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm interested in two things, really. One of them is, do you make anything out of the fact that Andrew goes to get his brother? Like, that's the person he goes to get? And the other is, do you have thoughts about this move to
about
Messiah?
what on earth they did that day that now they're like, we found the Messiah.
And they did it after 4:00, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Like, I don't do much after 4:00.
No. Oprah is wind down time. I hadn't thought about why he would go first to his brother. That just felt like a natural thing to me, that you would go to your closest person and say, you are not going to believe this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That it just felt sort of sweet and personal, not to go shout it from the hilltops or, start rumors in the tabloid magazines, but go get your brother.
I like that a lot. So we found something, like we found like the thing we've been looking for, or maybe we didn't even know we were looking for it.
Yeah.
And so who am I going to tell? I'm going to tell the one that's closest to me, which is my brother. I like that. I think it says something really lovely about their relationship instead of like, I'm going to keep this from my brother because like, that dude's always like one-upping me. So, So it shows a little bit of love, I think, or a respect for the relationship. And also that what he does is actually fairly simple. Like, it's not that Andrew has suddenly gone and like proclaimed it from the mountaintops.
That's right.
He's done the thing, like the closest, most obvious relationship to him. And that's the place where he testifies.
Yeah, that's right.
We have found the Messiah. And then we get translated to Christ.
Yeah, that's big.
I don't know. We talk from time to time about what the idea of Messiah might have been in the first century in Judaism. And I don't know if we want to revisit that conversation a little bit. Like, if you de-New Testamentize it and just think, here are two Jewish men in the first century, and they are pondering whether Jesus is the Messiah. Like, what do you think they might have meant by that?
I think that's a really important question. And I feel so aware that my knowledge about the subject is really like kind of before that period, or else maybe the modern period in the Jewish world. And so I'll tell you what's on my mind, but you may also have some really important tweaks to my understanding. I mean, the Messiah, at this time, the Jewish people, they didn't have sovereignty. Like they were living under the power of the Roman Empire. They didn't have like land that was like clearly their land. And so the hope for a Messiah was the hope for a return sort of to that, a return to that time, like under David's leadership, who was the anointed king, that they would have an anointed king and it was like a national thing, clearly connected to God, because only God could make that happen. And God would have to approve of the king and send the king and whatnot. But it was an idea that worked really in the political sphere, at least as much in the like religious, spiritual sphere. That's what I got.
That's really helpful. I think that's right. One of the things you were making me think of is the Gospel of John, very interestingly to me, unlike the other three Gospels, never refers to Jesus as the son of David. So John is not interested, it seems, in Jesus and the Davidic kingship. But I think what you're saying is right, like a human person who's going to reestablish the integrity of the people of Israel as a self-governing people in some kind of way. And there are Jews in the first century who think of that as sort of the heralding of the Messianic age and this sort of like shift in history away from ruled by political empires toward like the full manifestation of the kingdom of heaven or something like that in an earthly kind of sense. And so I wonder if maybe John's characters are thinking more in that kind of a
sort
way.
of moving in that direction. Yeah.
But I'm not, but also they're going to call him king in a minute. And so I think the key point to me is they are not connecting Jesus, or John is not connecting Jesus to the Davidic kingship per se.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, I think what you're saying seems exactly right. It's some sort of human figure who is going to reestablish the kingdom of God or the people of Israel in some kind of way. So Peter shows up, Simon Peter shows up, and Jesus says, "You are Simon, you will be called Cephas."
Yeah.
Do you read that as like, how does Jesus know his name is Simon? Do you read that as Andrew had said, "Hey, I'm going to go get my brother Simon," and Jesus is like, "Oh, there's your brother Simon"? Or do you read this as like Jesus just knew in his person who this was? Do you have a sense about that?
I mean, I feel like that the two things that occurred to me, I don't think the text answers the question for us.
It does not.
The two things that occurred to me, I'm a little embarrassed to say the first one because it was kind of functioning unconsciously, but it was just sort of like, well, Jesus is magic. So Jesus knows whatever Jesus wants to know.
Yeah.
Okay,
Jesus does know
fine.
stuff in this text.
So that was in there. And then there was also the like question of how long has he sort of been around these parts? How well is he paying attention to who people are? Like,
Oh, yeah.
you can, if he's paying attention to what's going on in the community, he can start to learn who people
I like
are,
that.
even if he hasn't met them.
Because John did say to the Pharisees in last week's text, "There is one among you
Yeah.
who is more important than I." And so it does suggest, like at the level of the text, that Jesus has been around and among the people. They just haven't realized who he is.
Yeah.
And so I
Right.
like that reading, that he's been paying attention to the community.
And it's interesting then to think like he knows who Simon is,
Yes.
even if Simon doesn't know who Jesus is.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Do you have another?
No, I like those two ways. I had really not thought of that second one. I had sort of, my two options were Jesus just knows because he's Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
or Jesus knows because Andrew told him, which I don't like. Like, that's just not that interesting. But
Yeah.
your reading of like, maybe Jesus has actually been paying attention to what's going on around him and he knows who the people are. I don't know quite where that goes for me, but I think it's really suggestive.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus knows, not magically, but because he's invested.
He's there. Yeah, because he's invested. I think that's what it is. It's, for me, it draws this sense of like connection to the community of people around you. And clearly there is connection to God, but not to the exclusion of all other
Yeah.
things.
The other piece that seems really important to me there is Jesus knows you, even if you do not yet know Jesus. And so I just think that's important in some way to understanding who this Jesus is, whether he knows you, what means through which he knows you, but just the fact of knowing. The first thing he does when he meets Simon is give him a nickname.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
Aramaic, Kephas, which means the rock.
That makes it sound so tough.
Smell what he's cooking. Yeah.
Yeah.
In Greek is Petros or Peter. And so I don't know. I just like that about Jesus, that he's just winging out nicknames like the rock to people when the first time he meets them.
I like that rendition of it so much more. I mean, I had been thinking of it with like such gravitas, like how, God renames Avram and Sarai
Yeah,
to
it's funny how
Abraham
you
and
should read
Sarah
that.
and Jacob
Yeah.
to Israel and all that stuff. And then, but I think there is, we could read it that way, or we could read it a little more as a sort of like familiarity kind of like nickname,
Yeah.
which has much more of like a relational piece to it. Like you nickname
Yes.
people that you have a relationship with.
Yeah. I like that way of reading it. In Matthew's gospel, Jesus says, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. And so he's given the sort of reason for the nickname. But in John, it doesn't. And I think it's interesting that all four of the gospels call him Peter. but they have different rationales, different ways of getting there. And so it seems to me like that historically, Jesus probably did have a disciple named Simon that he just called Rock, which I just think is kind of cool.
Rocky.
Yeah, Rocky. Rocco. Yeah. Peter is probably the most important of the disciples in the sense of like often represents the group, maybe less so in the Gospel of John than in some of the other Gospels. So, he's one that we look to see what the disciples are thinking or doing or how we should be responding to them. And so in that sense, he is kind of foundational, like a rock. But I like that the nickname can expand in many directions.
Yes.
Now, then Jesus encounters Philip. And this is just kind of more of a call story like I've sort of come to expect Jesus from the other Gospels.
Yeah.
He sees Philip and he says, "Follow me." Then we get the notice that Philip is from the same town as Andrew and Peter. That is from Bethsaida. And so, there's not a whole lot we get about Philip here, but anything that you notice in that little call story that seems important to you?
What stood out to me was what you're pointing to was that the first disciples, Jesus didn't call. They just happened to follow him. And then I almost had I wrote this little note in the margin that it was like, it's almost like because like the presence of the other disciples or their choice to follow him, it's like it activated something.
Oh, yeah.
And so now Jesus is stepping more actively into this.
I like that.
Okay, I am
This thing
a
is
teacher
happening.
and I need to have disciples. Yeah, but it was kind of kicked off by John and then John's disciples. And
I like that way of thinking about it.
how do you think about it? Or how have you thought about it?
I guess I hadn't really thought about why does Jesus shift here. What I had been thinking about more is I really like that in this text, there are multiple entry points for people. And so you don't have to be out on your fishing boat one day and have Jesus like just pick you out of a crowd.
Yeah.
But there's the way of like your teacher points you in that direction and you get curious, or your brother tells you like, "Hey, I've noticed something," or here Jesus does walk by and just say, "Follow me."
Yeah.
And so I've been reading it more as like, what does this mean as one called to follow Jesus? And that can look like a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And I really like that about this gospel. I like where you're headed though, about maybe something got activated in Jesus where, in next week's text, Jesus is going to say, "My time has not yet arrived," which I think is so like there's this question in John's gospel about how does Jesus's ministry get started and when? And I kind of like, I'm not sure I'm ready to fully go there yet, but I like that way of thinking about just the curiosity of Andrew and the other disciple and Peter coming to see Jesus. It kind of activated something, like set the thing in motion.
Yeah.
I like that. I don't know where that's going to land for me.
Yeah. No, I think in some ways, both of those readings, they set up like a really nice sort of, what's the word I want to use? I want to say like sort of inclusive, but like the motion of the story is coming from a lot of different directions and like feeding into itself in different ways. Like it's not like clearly Jesus is the protagonist. So, there are a lot of entry points for people to come into it, and people can be active in their own ways and can affect each other in their choices.
Andrew and the other first disciple get activated by the testimony of John, and then Simon gets activated by the testimony of Andrew, and then Philip gets direct encounter. And so we've got this theme of testimony and who points where and who invites you and the call. I really love that. The last disciple that we get here is Nathanael. And Philip, who's the one who just got invited in, goes and finds Nathanael and says, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law and the prophets, Jesus, Joseph's son, from Nazareth."
There's a lot in there.
yeah. What do you see in there that you want to unpack?
Well, we could start with Moses, the one Moses wrote about
Yeah.
in the law and the prophets, which for me has a different tenor to it than saying the Messiah.
Yes.
Like if, I'm thinking about how Moses said how in the Torah it says there'll be another prophet like Moses.
Yes.
Like maybe it's sort of like clearly we're in the area of like hugely important leader for our people.
Yes.
But that change in language, I don't know. Maybe it's not such a like nationalistic idea. Sort of as you were saying before, that it didn't necessarily have to be nationalistic anyway, and it doesn't mention David, and so maybe this is really leaning in that other direction.
Yeah, I think that's really important. The text you're referring to, I think, is Deuteronomy 18, in which the Deuteronomy says God will raise up another prophet like Moses. And I think you're exactly right. Like, that's not understood to be the same thing as the Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got a different gesture about who Jesus is from a different place, still grounded in Scripture, but not with the same implications as Messiah has.
Yeah.
And so we've got this sort of interesting thing happening here where all of these characters are referring, like they're trying to process this encounter that they're having with Jesus, and they're naming it differently. So we've got rabbi, we've got Messiah, prophet like Moses. And they're all like ways of trying to grasp this event, this person that they are experiencing. And it seems like none of them is exactly right.
I love that way of thinking.
But also none of them are exactly wrong.
Yeah.
Either.
Right. They're all reaching for something. Like they have some kind of shared core, like a core sort of feeling about them. But they can't, can you imagine if they could really wrap their heads around who this guy was on, the first day? Well, now we've had another day pass. So whatever day it is. Yeah, they're reaching, but it seems like they all have the same sort of like feeling in their kishkis about what kind of thing is happening, but they can't pin it down.
I appreciate your pointing out the shift of day, because it's easy to lose track of time here.
Yeah.
But on the one day, we had the two disciples go follow Jesus, and then we had Andrew go and call Peter. Then the next day, the day after that, we had Jesus call Philip and Philip go to find Nathanael. So that all happens in one day. So things are happening quickly, like in a matter of just like we're only a couple of days into this whole story.
Yeah, and we have I know I always ask this question, but like I don't feel like we have any real information about what is it about their experience that is making each of these people come to the just sort of like gut level knowing that okay, fine, they can't wrap their heads around the precise language or whatever, but they know very quickly that this person is categorically different than any of the other teachers they've had or people they have encountered.
I love that observation. And I think it's really good storytelling from John that like we know they're seeing something. Mm-hmm. And so as a reader, you're like, what are they seeing? And you really want to know.
Yeah.
But you're not being told. And so you've got to keep like looking and reading. And like we're going to find out some of the kinds of things.
Yeah.
This is probably deeply irreverent, but it reminds me of an episode of How I Met Your Mother. Did you ever watch that show?
I don't know that I did, but tell me about it, Bobby.
Well, there's they spend a lot of time in this bar. And then one day they notice that there's a door in the bar. And so I forget how the order goes. One of them goes over and opens the door. I think it's probably Ted, and looks in and is like, oh, wow. And just walks through the door. And then another one of them gets up and goes and does the same thing. And then another one, and then another one, until it's just Barney who's left at the table by himself. Uh-huh. And he's like, what is happening? And so he gets up and he goes and he opens the door. And so this takes a while. So you're really wondering like, what is behind this door? And then when he opens the door, they're all just hiding in the closet. It was all a big joke. So that's the irreverent part. But the storytelling part, like, it really does get you interested when people
does get
see
you interested,
something.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other thing that Philip tells Nathanael is that Jesus is Joseph's son from Nazareth.
Yeah.
So we've got rabbi, we've got Messiah, we've got prophet like Moses, and we've got Jesus from Nazareth.
Mhm.
That seems to be the one that Nathaniel catches onto, and not in the good way. Right?
I feel very proud of myself that I did not laugh aloud when you read that part out, because it just sounds so like just smack talk to me. Like,
Yeah.
I,
What do you
can
think he
anything
means?
good come out of Nazareth?
Yeah.
I mean, I assume he means Nazareth is like Jersey. No, it's not like Jersey, but
Yeah.
it's like it's a small nothing town.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? This is not some,
Yeah.
nothing happens in Nazareth.
I mean, living in Arkansas, like I feel a little bit like that's the way people from other parts of the country sometimes think about Arkansas. Like good stuff does come out of Arkansas for real. But when you mention that you're from Arkansas, people are like, oh, it's in Arkansas.
I forgot Arkansas existed. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it has a little bit of that, like maybe Nazareth is backwoods. Maybe it's like Hicktown, like something like that. Nathaniel clearly thinks that he is better than Nazareth. I think it's important, though, that this is yet another identifier of Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's not that suddenly this is the unimportant one. It's that it's, in my mind anyway, it stands along these other ones, Rabbi, Messiah, prophet like Moses, man from Nazareth. Like that is also a part of who Jesus is. That doesn't get the whole thing, but it also is necessary to the big picture.
Bobby, the other thing that's right there next to Jesus of Nazareth is son of Joseph.
Yeah.
Which made me realize
Yeah.
that John hasn't told us anything about, we don't have any miraculous virgin birth in John, right?
John is weird that way because no, we don't. But we do have the prologue, which tells us that the Word was with God in the beginning, and it became flesh.
Yes.
And so we know in some way, if we've read the prologue,
That's right.
I don't know if the characters in John know this, but we do, that in some way, this one who is the son of Joseph is also the pre-existent Word of God.
Yes. And also, I think maybe in a similar point to the point you're making about Jesus being from a place, from Nazareth.
Yeah.
He is the son of Joseph. Like he is within the boundaries of human community as they know them.
Yeah.
And yet also there is this other element of it that's a bit mysterious.
Yeah. So Philip's response that I like is just the same as Jesus had said earlier. Come and see.
Yeah. He learned fast.
He did. He did come.
I'm going to start saying that to people.
Come and see.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll pick up in verse 47. Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said about him, "Here is a genuine Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael asked him, "How do you know me?" Jesus answered, "Before Philip called you, I saw you under the fig tree." Nathanael replied, "Rabbi, you are God's son. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than these. I assure you that you will see heaven open and God's angels going up to heaven and down to earth on the human one." So here we have the second instance in which Jesus seems to know somebody before they arrive.
Mm-hmm.
This time, Nathanael asks the question that I asked you last time, which is, how does Jesus know who he is? To which Jesus' reply is, "I saw you under the fig tree." Does that help anything?
You're like, that doesn't really mean you know him. That means you saw him under the fig tree. I mean,
Before Philip called you, I saw you.
Yeah. On the sort of like, I don't know, surface level meaning of the text, I think it does make me think back to our conversation before that like Jesus is paying attention to who is around him. But there also, I think, is some symbolic meaning that could be associated with the fig tree. I read that in later sources, sitting under the fig tree means studying. Like there's some teaching that that maybe the fig tree was the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. You know, it wasn't an apple tree because there were not apples in the Middle East. Or that there's some association between fig trees and abundance, or fig trees and the eschaton, although I don't know what that association is. Do you think that he's going for a symbolic association here?
It's so interesting because, all of those resonances, I think, could be read in this text. And also some scholars just, there's just a lot of fig trees in Galilee.
Uh-huh.
And so, like, he's just under a fig tree,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yep.
I think you could read it either of those.
Mm-hmm.
I myself don't really resonate with those kind of more symbolic readings. I just think he was under a fig tree and Jesus saw him is all I really want to read in this story. But I don't know if that's just a limitation of imagination or...
I mean, I kind of like that, and I really appreciate your point that, like, there are a lot of fig trees, so we shouldn't get too precious about making them symbolic. But what does that mean to you? Like, how do you know me? I saw you under a fig tree. That doesn't constitute knowing someone. If there are fig trees everywhere, like, that's just like I saw you at the grocery store. So
yeah.
now
I think this is the same, in my mind, this is a same conversation that we sort of had about Simon earlier. And in my mind, the options are Jesus is able to see things even when he is not physically present.
Mm-hmm.
So he has in his spirit, we know he is the pre-existent word. And so he just is able to see this interaction between Philip and Nathanael, even though he is not present for it. He sees it. So it's magical in that sense that you were using earlier.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people read it that way. Jesus just knows stuff. But he doesn't actually say, I saw you under the fig tree talking to Philip. He just says, I saw you under the fig tree. And so it's not entirely clear that he saw the interaction.
Mm.
Maybe that's what he saw. Like, I saw what happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Which leaves open what you were saying earlier, which is Jesus has been around and he pays attention.
Yeah.
And he really is like, I saw you at the grocery store once. But nonetheless, like, people who have seen me at the grocery store once and they know who I am, they pay attention in a different way than I pay attention.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I see people at the grocery store all the time. I have no idea who they are.
No,
I've never seen them before.
I like that so much, Bobby. And I like it. I think I've always read that line about here is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit in relation to his very blunt statement that nothing good can come from Nazareth. Like, he's not hiding what he thinks about anything. You can like or not like what he says, but he's not sly, this one.
So then in that reading, Jesus has actually seen the interaction.
Yeah.
And he's heard Nathanael say, nothing good can come from Nazareth.
Yeah.
And he's saying, you speak your mind, Nathanael. I like that.
Yeah. And I also like the possibility of sort of broadening that. Like, I saw that, and I see you as a person who is not afraid to say what you think.
It is interesting that that's what Jesus kind of knows about him, is he's not deceitful. You are an honest person who says what you believe to be true. Jesus also refers to him as an Israelite.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit maybe anachronistic at this time.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting usage in the Gospel of John. We were talking before about the Gospel of John often uses the term Jews to refer to the leaders of the Jewish religious organization, the sort of religious elites. Mm-hmm. But he uses a term like Israelite to talk about regular Jewish folk. So I just say that because sometimes people are like, oh, John doesn't like Jews. Mm-hmm. But that is not actually. John is suspicious of religious elites, but he recognizes here a Jewish person who is not deceitful, who is like a worthy follower of him. And so it's not about, he doesn't like a group of people. It's he doesn't like a certain class within that group of people. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you would do with that reference to him as an Israelite?
I mean, that statement, I don't know. It makes me feel a little weird because I feel like there's some like, here's an Israelite in whom there's no deceit, as opposed to the other
it's the,
Israelites.
exception. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's what he was going for. I did. My study Bible has a note that maybe the word Israelite here is sort of trying to bring to mind Jacob as whose name is changed to Israel, and who is he is a real trickster.
Very deceitful.
You know, like he is really tough for the modern ethicist.
Yeah, we read that story
of any
back early
faith
this
background.
year. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. I feel like that possibility just makes it even a little more pointed.
Oh, I take that point. I'm going to have to wrestle with that a little bit. But the pointing out here's an honest Jew.
Yeah.
That's not that great of a thing to say.
It hurt my feelings a little bit, but
it
does. I think it doesn't have to be that way, but that's how it.
But that's helpful to me because I would be a little thoughtful about how I interpret that. Nathanael then gives 3 references to who Jesus is: Rabbi, Son of God, King of Israel.
Yeah.
Thoughts about those references?
So I'm sort of seeing Son of God in parallel to King of Israel.
Okay.
Which is, one way that one could think about those things.
Like the kings of Israel were thought of as God's kind of adopted.
God's adopted.
Sons.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. But that still feels like I don't know. That adds another element to what we've had sort of in the mix already with Messiah and one like Moses, Son of God.
Yes.
Which we could, we are in the New Testament, so you could read it.
Yes.
It's fair. This is fair game to read it as in the Christian tradition. And King of Israel, which, doesn't mention David, but is a political figure.
What you're saying there about Son of God, I think is really important. And, there's always the possibility that Nathanael doesn't quite know what he is saying. And so, you and I have read the prologue, and so we know what the Gospel of John anyway thinks about who Jesus is. And so Son of God in that kind of metaphysical sense is entirely appropriate. But Nathanael could be saying Son of God in the way you're thinking as a specially chosen person who is the ruler of Israel. And, so it can function on maybe both those levels at the same time, or maybe there's an unpacking that the gospel is going to do between those two ideas. And so we can sort of see the possibilities. I think the same might also be true with King of Israel. This idea of Jesus as king is going to keep coming back and back in the Gospel of John. And there's going to be a point when Jesus feeds the 5,000 in this text that the people try to make him a king and Jesus runs away. There's also that interaction at the end of the gospel where Pilate is trying to decide if Jesus is king of the Jews. And Jesus says, "You have said so." And then when Jesus is crucified in this gospel, the plaque over his head says King of the Jews. And so that idea is going to keep coming back. Mm-hmm. But it's not exactly like, Jesus is the King of the Jews. It's you got to think something different about what you mean by king.
Right.
And so I think this is another instance in which we've got titles that are gesturing to something that is true about Jesus, but not exactly maybe in the way that the characters intend them. And none of them are entirely adequate to explaining who Jesus is. Somewhere in this collection that we've got now, Rabbi, prophet like Moses, Messiah, King of the Jews, Son of God, Jesus, Joseph's son from Nazareth. Somewhere in the mix of all of that, we're getting close, but nothing has quite got it of their own accord. The last thing that happens here is that Jesus describes in verse 51. So you'll see greater things than these. So whatever they have been coming and seeing, you're going to see even greater things. And so we get excited about that, I guess, as readers. But this last verse, you will see heaven open and God's angels going up to heaven and down to earth on the human one. Mm-hmm. That is a very provocative image. Mm-hmm. I'm not entirely sure what it's trying to provoke, or maybe I mean evoke.
Either one of those.
Either one of those. So when you read that language,
Yeah.
where does your head go?
I mean, my head goes to the story of Jacob and the ladder and the angels going up and down the ladder. And then that makes me think like Jacob, Israel, the Israelite, and his laying on a rock. And I don't know, like I'm starting to think like, is that scene, like that story, is this story opening up that story in a different kind of way?
If it is doing that, do you have a sense of what way it's opening it up?
In the story, as we read it in Genesis, there's no sense of sort of like heaven opening up. Like there's not this sort of apocalyptic idea behind it that the sort of veil between heaven and earth is being pulled aside in some way. And so if we imagine in this instance that like Jesus is the conduit between heaven and earth while that heaven opening up is happening, it is, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what elements of that Genesis story would really play here. Jacob's sense that he didn't know God was in this place.
I think you're pointing us in all the right directions. And I mean, I think one of the nice things about evocative images is that it's hard to pin them down exactly.
Yeah.
But the ladder was the connection point between heaven and earth, and Jesus, or the Son of Man here, seems to be standing in for the ladder. And so now your language of the conduit, I think, is exactly right. Jesus is now the connection point that brings heaven to earth and earth to heaven. And it goes in both directions. The angels are down and up. And so that connection point. I also think that idea of in this place, or Jacob says, what's his language? We're in Genesis 28, which we read earlier. Something like, this is the threshold of the kingdom of heaven, or something like that. And it was in one particular place in Bethel.
Yes.
Now it's in one particular person who moves around in the world. And so there is no particular place that is that threshold, but there is a particular person. And so if we want to know, and then I think maybe this idea of the heavens opening up, like we're going to see in the Gospel of John a few times that like Jesus says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, and things like that. And so maybe the sense that heaven is opened up is that like heaven is now walking around on earth in the Gospel of John. And so you can actually gaze upon it and be near it and understand it's among us. And so maybe those are some of the resonances that are getting worked out here.
Yeah.
All right, Amy, there's much in this text that we can and have talk about and think about. If you are imagining the ways in which this text touches the ground, so to speak, in our contemporary world, what is it speaking to you?
This text just has me thinking so much about the teacher-student relationship and the ways in which our society often like really tries to put it in a box and make it very organized and like, I'm your teacher during these hours, but if you see me at the grocery store, you're like, how could you possibly exist out in the world? And as you would use the word apprenticeship before, and I think this is really drawing my mind back to like, no, but who are the people that I really learn from in how to be a human being in the world, like how to live in a body in my best self. And it's a very intimate relationship. Like a teacher has to be willing to let students see all kinds of vulnerability, how they're going to navigate all kinds of kind of chaotic situations that they don't know. They can't come up with a lesson plan. Like they can't, like it's really it's a mess. Like life is a mess. And the students have to be willing to just follow them and know that some days maybe you'll really have a sense of what you learned, and some days maybe you won't have a sense of what you learned, or maybe you'll learn things and won't have words to put around them. But it's a really different kind of learning than, I don't know, than going to class, you know? And I will say, as my parents are aging and are both dealing with like pretty serious health issues at this point, I feel so aware every time I spend time at home that even if what we do is lay around on the couch and watch bad movies all day, I am learning from them how to do this next part just by being with them, like just by seeing how they handle this dumb thing that comes up and this, discomfort and this bad news and this good news. And there's not a way to summarize it. Like, people keep asking me what I'm learning, and I'm like, I can't, it's not a bullet pointable thing, but it's real.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the teaching that is happening here is, yes, it's hard to bullet point, but it's clearly real because it's changing the students real quick.
I love that so much, Amy. I'm really resonating with what you're saying there. And the other thing that I'm resonating with in this text is this idea of how people come to be part of Jesus's community. How do they become his disciples? And one of the things I really love in this text, I mean, I've said it a few times by now, is that there is no one way that this happens in this text. And I think that is so rich to me. It is about disciples who hear their teacher say, hey, that thing over there, that person over there, that's worth checking out. And so they just go along and they don't know why. They don't know what they're looking for. They come up with a question that's just like, where are you staying tonight? It's not a profound, it's not that they were suddenly thunderstruck.
Yeah.
And they were like, I am now your disciple. It's that they sort of eased their way in with curiosity. Then we get the sort of like familial, like someone you know and trust, like invites you. We get the direct invitation from Jesus, follow me. We even get Nathanael, who is a total skeptic, like, Messiah, like the Messiah can come from Nazareth. But he kind of comes along anyway, but like a little begrudgingly so.
Yeah.
And all of those people are welcomed and known and invited to be part of this thing that Jesus is now doing. And to me, like, I have trouble finding myself in I'm on a fishing boat and a guy walks by and says, follow me. And I drop everything and off I go. Like, I'm like, I don't know if but like the begrudging skeptic who kind of makes fun of it a little, but goes anyway. I can relate to that guy, or the person who just like, I don't know what I'm looking for, but let's just go see what happens. And so I really like that in this text. It feels very invitational. And that the point is just to show up. And it doesn't really matter so much why you show up or what's motivating you or how you got started. The other thing with this come and see is just making me think about my own Christian communities and what people see when they come there. And so this question that we've been asking of like, what did they see that made them want to stay? Like, I don't know. But the question of like, what do you see when you come to Canvas community, or what do you see when you come to Second Presbyterian Church in Little Rock? Like, those are real questions.
Yeah.
And is what you see there what is going to motivate you to want to keep coming and being curious and wonder? And sometimes the answer is yeah, and sometimes the answer is maybe not. And so that this gives kind of a direction about how my communities might grow and learn and think about what we're showing to people who come into the door for whatever reason.
Oh, I love that. It's beautiful, Bobby.
All right, Amy. Well, next week we're going to be in John 2, 1-11, which is a very famous and confusing story about Jesus' first miracle, changing water into wine at a wedding in Cana. And so I'm sure we'll have many things to talk about next time.
I look forward to it.
All right, me too. See you then.
See you then. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Bible Worm. If you've enjoyed this free podcast, we hope you'll help us keep it going by joining our Patreon for as little as $4 per month. You can also sign up for other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for details.
Bible Worm is produced and edited by Bobby Williamson. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs.
Many thanks to all our Patreon supporters for helping make this podcast possible.
Join us next week when we'll be reading the story of Jesus turning water into wine as told in John 2, 1-11. Till then, keep on digging.